Hello and welcome back to the channel. Before I start, I'd like to apologize. I'm just recording on the floor right now. I don't exactly have like a little recording section yet because I've recently rearranged my room and haven't really gotten around to it yet. But anyways, recently I've been getting a nostalgia kick and I wanted to play my old childhood Nintendo games. Now I'm not just talking about normal Nintendo NES games, but if you've grown up in the eastern part of Europe, you're probably familiar with these types of yellow cartridges that you could buy on the market back in the 90s and early 2000s. And I've got like a bit of a collection of these, and I wanted to play them, but I just didn't have the right hardware because being located in Europe, every Famicom has always been PAL. And that means you're kind of getting a worse experience. Your games are only running at 50 Hz as opposed to 60 Hz and TSC. And, well, locally you can only really buy PAL consoles, and I, thought, let's just try to import something. But then I've actually looked around online and did a lot of research, and I found a really cool system that I want to talk about today. And it's none other than this. This is the HD, 8-bit HD entertainment system super console from AliExpress. Now, you know, it's got the usual marketing slogan on it. There's an HD cable and 40% quality increase. Well, that's a lie. That is way better, like much more than 40% quality improvement over an AV Famicom or Famiclone system. And so this was in the box. So I'm going to talk about this system today. I did a lot of research, and it seemed to me like this console has the best video quality out of all of them. Most of them look kind of soft, kind of blurry. This one looks really, really good. Now this is specifically the retro branded Famiclone. I'll put a picture of the listing on the screen and also a link in the description so you can find it. There are a lot of Famiclones that look like this, but this is the one that you're looking for with the best video quality. Now, on the front of it, it says Retro Genesis 8-bit. It comes with two controllers. It is definitely modeled after the original Famicom. But on the back, you get not only the AV ports, but an HDMI. And this is very important. It needs to look like this. This is what the back of it needs to look like. Some of the other models don't look like this. Those might be softer. This is what you're looking for. It's got a micro USB for power. It's got a 16:9 and 4:3 aspect ratio switch, so that's very good. It's got AV ports and an HDMI. And you can actually use the AV ports at the same time as the HDMI, which leads me to believe that this is actually not using composite video for the HDMI output, so it's probably scaling RGB potentially, and it looks really, really good. Here's the bottom of the system. Now you can see there's some Russian writing on it. This is potentially made for the Russian market. It says model C56. One great thing about this is that with a lot of other Famiclones, you might end up getting a PAL version, which is exactly what you're not looking for. So if you're ordering it with an EU power supply, you might end up getting a PAL console, but this one is only available in NTSC. So you don't have to worry about that. You won't be accidentally getting a PAL unit of this model because they don't exist. So that's good. It's always going to be 60 Hz. So I can finally play my collection of games in NTSC instead of PAL. Now what you need to know is that these cartridges, even though the console is PAL, most of the Famiclones are PAL. These are just basically ROMs of the NTSC-J game. And so yeah, they are meant to be played in NTSC. So there are the controllers. They're detachable. They actually hold pretty well. In the case, I was holding it upside down and it didn't fall out. And it's actually using the original NES 7-pin connector. So you could replace this with an original NES controller or any kind of NES controllers like light gun, whatever, if that works for your CRT setup. And you can just use that. And there's a little flap covering the 60-pin Famicom cartridge port. There's a little power LED indicator on the front. There's the on-off switch and the reset button. Actually, I just noticed this, there seems to be a little bit of lubrication on the button, so it slides a bit softer. That is really nice. And there's the eject mechanism. Actually, the eject mechanism works really well. The cartridge port itself and the eject mechanism feel really, really nice. So here's a copy of Yankees. Put it in. Very nice. And just eject it. It's awesome. Very good. You can play original Famicom games on it, or these, yellow cartridges. Or even, you could play AliExpress multi-carts. This one worked as well for me. Let's talk about the controllers a little bit. They're clones of the Famicom controller. However, you get more buttons. You get A and B, and you get Turbo A and B. They're actually in the correct order, so this is B and this is A, and this is Turbo B and Turbo A. And the D-pad feels nice. The buttons are really good. And the cable is a little bit, not to my liking that it comes out there, but you can get used to it. And I mean, that's how the original Famicom as well was. However, actually, on my unit, the second controller has like a slightly better D-pad, I think, than the first one. So that's just probably like some manufacturing variance. The right button feels a little different than on this one. It's more sharp on this one. That's just, but they're still perfectly serviceable. And it's like a huge upgrade from, the usual Famiclone quality that you get, because usually you get the cheapest, most crappy plastic on most of the cheap Famiclones. And you can be lucky if at least all the buttons are working, because sometimes that's even too much to ask. However, this is really good quality plastic, very nice molding, and honestly it looks really good. I don't have an original Famicom to compare it size-wise, but it's fairly close. My unit came with a Russian power supply. However, if you order it from the US, I'm sure you get like an extra adapter to be able to plug it into North American outlets. It's a 5 volt, 1 amp micro USB power supply. You can probably just use another micro USB cable if you have a 1 amp 5 volt power supply. So let's hook it up and see what we get. Okay, so for testing I'm just going to use this old LG TV because I had it laying around. Currently we have no cartridge plugged in, and the unit actually comes with 300 built-in games, so that's really nice. Now some of these games are actually in Russian, so might not be most optimal for you, but here's the list of games we're getting on the system itself. Before I actually get into some gameplay, I'm going to be doing direct capture as well to show you what that looks like. Don't worry about the little darkening there, that's just my TV. It's a really old TV, it's kind of falling apart. Anyways, so yeah, here's the list of games. Before I get into gaming, I want to tell you something that lots of people probably know about, but just to be clear, this is a Famiclone, which means it uses an NES on a chip system. And then it takes that and it scales that up to 720p HD. The image is really good. However, there's one caveat. It personally doesn't bother me, but it might be a problem for others. The reverse duty cycle, if you know what that is, then I don't need to explain anymore. But basically what it means is a certain tone that you hear in NES games will be played at a different phase, and it will just sound a little bit different. I'll link a video explaining what that exactly means, but you'll just notice that some of the games will sound a little bit different. I think it gives it a bit of charm personally, but that might just be nostalgia speaking. But I really don't mind, and I think this is an amazing deal, and you get a super sharp 720p image. Especially if your TV has good scaling, then it's going to look really nice. But yeah, still going through the 300 games. I didn't even actually expect my unit to have built-in games. That was a bit of a surprise because it didn't mention it, but yeah. There's some really good ones here, however, like I said, some of them are in Russian, like all the Super Mario Brothers games are going to be in Russian. Unfortunately, no Mega Man or Rockman or anything like that. That's a bit of a shame. But we do get even Super Mario Bros. 3 with a Russian patch on it. And that's all the games. I'll fire up like maybe one of them. Let's fire up Super Mario Brothers 1, which is going to be right here. So as you can see, yeah, you can see that the color palette is actually really nice on this. I feel like it's kind of similar to composites on an NES. Now my camera isn't completely dead center, which I apologize, I can't make my tripod go any lower than this, but I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer so you can take a close look at the pixels and just see how sharp everything looks. So I've brought you a little bit closer to the TV. Just take a moment and appreciate how sharp the text looks and how sharp everything looks. I think it looks really good. Took my camera off the tripod to give you like a freehand mode here. Take a close look at every bit of pixels. That does not look like composite video, and I honestly think that this might just be RGB. It looks absolutely incredible. But I'll also show you direct capture later on so you can take a closer look at it. Right now I'm just recording this segment on my camera so that we can kind of just try out different games and pop them in and, you know, test them out, see if they all work. But yeah, I'm gonna increase the volume a tiny bit. So this is not emulation, this is an NES on a chip. I should not try to play through the camera feed. So you do get the reverse duty cycles, but it is really decent. Video quality, I think, easily... The video quality easily outweighs the negative of the reverse duty cycle. Okay, now I'm going to put in one of my old games. This one is my childhood version of Rockman. Let's fire it up. And just like that, there we go. Rockman in beautiful HD 720p. It looks really good. My gameplay is very bad, but that doesn't matter. Input latency is decent. There's a little bit of it. Depending on your TV too, it might change. On a monitor I feel like it would be probably pretty much perfect. But perfectly serviceable. I'm going to put in an old yellow multi-cartridge. One important thing to mention too is that I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to scalars. So I have all of them, like OSSC, GBSC, RetroTink. I got a lot of different scalars. I'm trying to always get the maximum out of my old consoles. And I was under the impression that most of these HDMI systems kind of use a crappy scaler, and they're not worth it. So I was actually looking for an AV Famicom for most of the time, until I did a lot of research on these, and somehow this is actually a decent scaler. It's not too laggy, and it's actually not misinterpreting 240p as 480i. You don't see any of the 240p misinterpretation artifacts on the gameplay. It just looks natural. It looks really decent. So I don't know what kind of magic they did, but I get the feeling that it has to be some kind of a cheap scaler that's been hacked to work in 240p mode instead of interpreting 240p as 480i. And last but not least, before we move on to direct capture, let's check out a AliExpress multi-cart. This is the Pocket Games 150-on-1. One thing I noticed about this specific cartridge, and it's actually true for a lot of multi-carts from AliExpress, is that they use kind of interesting design, not necessarily the most optimal for these multi-carts. So you gotta be careful. I wouldn't really put these into original systems like an NES or Famicom. But in clone systems, I think it's fine. But even in clone systems, you actually need like a powerful enough power supply to where it works. Because I've actually tried this in some AV Famiclone systems, and sometimes the image would get dimmer because this cartridge needs more power than a normal old school cartridge. So yeah, it's a bit weird, but it seems to work perfectly fine on this machine. Like I said, it's a 5-volt 1-amp power supply. This should, be perfectly adequate. So yeah, AliExpress multi-carts seem to be working good too. Let's just fire up Super Mario Bros. 3 here real quick. Or sorry, I mean 3. Okay. This is the Japanese version. This isn't Russian anymore, so let's go. Yep. This cartridge works perfectly fine too. And I would assume, I'm fairly certain an EverDrive would work fine on this as well, since this is just, it is a it's a Famiclone, so it's using a NES on a chip instead of emulation. However, the video quality is so good that I wouldn't be, I would actually believe if someone told me that this is emulation. overall, I could not be happier with this machine. I think it was well worth the money. It has amazing video quality. It does have the reverse duty cycle issue. That is a non-issue for me personally. It feels nice and premium. It plays any kind of cartridges. You can play original Famicom games, clone games, whatever. So if you're in the market for a machine that delivers a nice, crisp image with not too much input latency, and you know, if you just want to save your original systems and you want to use rather a machine like this instead of playing on your original systems, this is a perfect choice, I think. I mean, it's plug and play. You just hook it up to your HDMI TV. If it even has a 4x369 switch, I think it's great. So I couldn't be happier with this machine. So I highly recommend it. So if you want to check it out, I linked it in the description. By the time you watch it, maybe the link would have changed. I'm not sure. Sometimes links change on AliExpress, but there you go. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.